Good evening, everybody. Welcome to another episode of LessonPix Live. I'm Bill Binko, my wife, co-founder Lori Binko here.
Hello.
Beth Poss is with us, Director of Educational Programs here at LessonPix, also Speech Path Extraordinaire. And we have a special guest tonight, Elisa Wern, OT, one of our all-time favorite OTs. I mean, top two or three.
I was like, wait, where are the numbers out there?
No, like, I mean, seriously, of all the people that we are gonna
pyramid,
if we think OTs, it's gonna be you, it's gonna be Judy Schoonover. I mean, these are the folks that we're gonna think about all the time, and we're so happy you could join us here. I'm gonna look at the comments section and see what we get coming up here. Hopefully, lots. I know that a lot of people. We just got done with the AOTA conference, and it went very well. I think you'd agree.
Very busy, very active conversations about LessonPix.
Yep. And Elisa was good enough to work with us in the booth and presented with Beth and Judy at the conference.
Couple times,
a 3-hour one that looked exhausting. So Beth came back, was like done. She was done. Kelly says
we talked a ton about play. Oh, Kelly Fauner. We talked a ton about play for 3 hours, which is just one little piece of who OTs are, especially with early intervention and school aged. And I'm happy that I could be here on an OT month, because that is April. April is OT month, to talk a little bit about what OTs do that isn't maybe things you would primarily think of, and then we're going to talk about literacy, because I can't not talk
That's
about
right. You are one of our big literacy folks.
Right.
So a little bit of background. I mean, Elisa and I met a long time ago. We met on a different path, right? So we met on the AT Makers path, really, and we have had several battles where we were on the same side fighting for AT access for people. For those of you who don't know, Elisa is also the person who saved Elisa and I saved these so that people who use these for access because of cerebral palsy and other motor dysfunction diseases they are still able to communicate because of the work Elisa did, and then the work that AT Makers did to follow up on it. So
that's called an IntelliKeys keyboard.
This is an IntelliKeys keyboard. I'm not going to spend much time on it, but it came about in the 90s. You had one in the 90s, right?
I did.
Yeah. So these have been around forever and ever. And because of this wonderful key guard on top and the fact that they're indestructible, these are one of the few tools that certain folks with cerebral palsy can access, because their hand can go over it and then press into the button and things like that.
Yeah, really any kind of motor delay. It's one of those things that, yes, there are other alternate keyboards, but there are some users for which this is the thing. And so, yes, I think that's how our paths came together, was really working towards that.
And so Elisa,
the work OTs do and with literacy, but is a slightly separate part of the world.
It is. Elisa went and beat up AbleNet until they caved, and Adam Wing gave up the drivers, made them open source, and then in order to make that work, AT Makers took those drivers, made them work with Windows 10, and then eventually made an adapter that makes them unnecessary. So it'll work with an iOS device, it'll work with an Android. So we've run a long way with that, and ever since then you've been part of the team, certainly the AT Makers team, and now the LessonPix team kind of as well. So I'm thrilled that you're here. You are one of my all-time favorite OTs, so thank you for being here and joining us. For those of you who are like, why are we doing this? So we are doing a whole month of OT interviews, and we don't usually do these weekly, so we're going to do these every week this month.
All April,
at least 4. Maybe 5 interviews with occupational therapists this month. Extraordinaire, right? And we announced, we sent out an email announcing them today. And the idea here for me is I was surprised. I have a little bit of an agenda. We always try to have a little bit of a reason for this, other than just kind of sharing things with our users. Um, we also, I noticed when we were at AOTA, the gap. Like some of the users, some of the people at AOTA, some of the OTs used us in a big way, and were so successful and so able to do amazing things with LessonPix, and others just had absolutely no clue who we were and what we did. And that's kind of good. That's kind of what you want at a conference. You don't want to be preaching to the choir every year. But it also made it seem that maybe we weren't doing a good enough job sharing why LessonPix is so powerful for OTs. And so one of the things I want to get out of these 4 or 5 interviews is let's get some really good things we can start to share, whether that's snippets from our conversations or things we can take, distill down to be able to present to a special ed director or something else that says, look, your OTs need this too. Here's why.
Yeah, and I think maybe to set the stage, our related service providers are a little different than when we think about our special educators, is that we're really working from birth to end of life, right? That's very similar for folks who are SLPs, that our practice area is wide and deep. And that includes all kinds of occupations. Now, when people hear the word occupational therapy, they're often not necessarily thinking, all the areas we do cover. They think, oh, you're vocational. You help them support folks get jobs, which is a piece of our practice. Right. But when we talk about the big picture of our practice, we're talking about things like activities of daily living, things you and I do across all of our time. Helping people to be able to take care of their hygiene needs, feeding, talking about what we call IADLs. Technically, that's things of making sure you can care for others, that I can take care of my dog, that, you're able to make an appointment if you need to for medical assistance, all the way through shopping and managing your checkbook and all of those kinds of things. We talk about health management and, can you independently take your medication and know when to. So I think sometimes we get the misnomer of, our scope is this box that people know us of. And usually when we're talking about school-age children, that's handwriting, right? Right. People tend to think, okay, refer them to OT because they can't form all their letters. And sometimes it's an area where we need to intervene as a skilled professional. And sometimes it's that they just haven't had direct instruction on how to do that. Right. That's definitely something that happened pre-COVID, but really during COVID, we saw a lot of folks that pivoted to be electronic, and our pre-K, K1, 2 just didn't get any paper pencil instruction. So that is a piece of what we do, but really our role in handwriting is things like underlying issues that may affect hand strength, visual perception, planning out and organizing things like executive function for writing. And I think that's a piece of the puzzle of handwriting, but it involves having skilled intervention too. And I think knowing a little bit about that, the width and the depth of what we do, it is something that we need visual supports for. We need interactive activities for, again, for parent education as early as our families that are in the NICU with a premature child, and all the way through folks helping adults with elder care. Right. And those visuals can be very powerful for building independence, which is always a goal of occupational therapy. But there may be some things and some activities across all of these occupations that our goal is interdependence, right? That maybe they cannot do it fully on their own for whatever reason, physical reason, cognitive reason, whatever the case may be. And it's what steps do we put in place for them to continue to have quality of life and have as much independence as possible, and then know that there are plans in place so that they get their medications on time and all those other things can happen seamlessly. And again, I could spend an entire hour just talking about what we do as our wide scope, but I know fortunately you've got 4 different times that we're going to talk about 4 different things. Yeah. But hopefully that sets the stage a little bit.
Absolutely. I'm always amazed when I'm always amazed at the difference it makes when we bring an OT in for whatever reason. Like at AT Makers, when I brought Judy in to Ella's house, just her ability to look at positioning, right, and just shifting the way that they'd positioned the switches and things for Ella just made a night and day difference, right? And it's sometimes, I mean, one of the things I can just say is, if you're not sure, right, bring in an OT for a consult, right? Just, add them, just because they have a very different set of skills than most of the professionals we work with.
That's a very kind way of saying we have a different way of looking at the world.
Yeah, they're weirdos.
Sometimes
They're
we're odd
weird.
birds, right? People are attracted to OT, especially when they're working with kids in the school system. Chances are either they themselves or a family member had some kind of need that they experienced as they kind of were figuring out what they want to do with life.
Right.
And, especially folks who are really drawn to working with self-regulation and sensory kids, all of us have sensory things, right? I've been around most of you long enough to know I know what your sensory things are. But that's a typical, right? Like, it's a typical, you figured out the things that work for you to self-regulate. And that's just a skill we have to teach. We have to explicitly teach some people. And OTs are good detectives at being able to figure out what are those things that can help self-regulate, and then how do we help that learner, that adult, that student figure out how to integrate that into their world so that they can keep up with their occupations. And we know from the age 3, yes, there's beauty, those OT colored glasses. Like, I think from age 3 until when they're, post-school adults and beyond, their jobs are to be students. Their jobs are to learn. And there are so many things that can impact their ability to learn. If they can't go through the process of mealtime independently and it takes them forever to do it, well, then maybe we're missing academics then, right? And how do we balance all of those things?
All right. I appreciate all that. By the way, I threw her under the bus as we were going, like, when we start off, can you just, give a couple minutes on OTs in general in case people don't know where you fit? She's like, but you did great. Thank you. I really appreciate that. By the way, if you ever join us on LessonPix Live, it is like this always, but it always turns out awesome. So I'd love to hear a little bit more about kind of some of the stuff we did see at AOTA, but also what you use LessonPix for in your practice, and kind of show us some things that you maybe don't think people recognize, or maybe you need reminders of that it's there.
So I think if we zero in a little bit for the time being on school age supports,
sure.
I think OTs probably use them, or should be using them, for a couple different reasons. Probably, again, we used to think, the SLP or the special ed, they're the ones that make those schedules. Well, no, we need a schedule. I needed a calendar reminder to remember I'm doing this tonight, right? We need schedules throughout our day, and that includes when they're coming to OT. They need to know what's happening during that OT session. I don't like to go someplace where I don't know the agenda for the meeting, and our learners are no different. So visual schedules is definitely one, and being able to not only make the schedule, but be able to do it in a way that is highly motivating to that learner. Like, they're a dinosaur kid. We make that schedule going back down the dinosaur. They're trains, they want a rainbow, right? So to me, that's that combination of us being able to look at that learner and see who they are holistically, and not just, we're just going to put schedule pictures out because we know they need a schedule.
Right.
So definitely visual schedules. And then to me, it's about breaking down that activity to think what's going to be most motivating to help that learner participate. If we are working on handwriting, it doesn't mean I have to put a handwriting sheet in front of that learner and say, let's practice our formation. In fact, that's probably the quickest way to get somebody to be like, nope, not doing this.
Right.
So making it a game, making it a movement-based activity as well, making it an obstacle course where they're searching for letter pieces and then they have to go put them on the board and see what letters they can make. Like, to me, it's about how do we think about what that component piece is we're really trying to address, and then put it in a motivating activity. Right.
Very cool. So one of the things we saw, so I know, Lori, you brought in some stuff. I don't know what you're going to show, if anything. But one of the things you just mentioned was some of the larger, let me shrink you down here. Some of the larger manipulatives that people don't necessarily know we have. I know you made a ton of the street letters.
I did bring one.
And you brought one? Good.
I did,
Good.
but
I
I did forget the car.
You can imagine
the car. Sorry, we're all good. So this is what we're talking about here, right? So these are literally, you can't see. Sorry, I can't see. There you go. So every one of these exists, and I got to tell you the number of people, right? The number of people we had a little car at AOTA. The number of people were so excited about the car and being able to use these large manipulative. I mean, this is the letter D. It's not a big deal, right? But
it is because before you're going to be able to use those little intrinsic hand muscles to form a D, you've got to use your big body muscles to do it.
Right, exactly. And so these are all there.
What I would do is I would put this on the smartboard and start really big, right? Where we're crossing the midline and going over. And then I like these also for bringing it small because they sort of present a guide of where your D would go, you know, like as if you're driving the car rather than having to exactly trace that dotted line,
right,
and get that hand tension and that pressure so stressed. So I don't know. I just love these road letters.
And so
we want to make it fun, but we also don't want to make it so that we're driving our car in the wrong direction because we have a lot of students that have learned to draw their letters, which is very different than I've learned how to form my letters and to write them. So we want to make sure that they're starting at the top and they're going down first for that D, and then they're jumping back up to the top because cars can magically do that, and then going around the curve. But you know, to get there, we have to teach that letters are made of lines and curves. And I did pull up one of my activities that I do with that, if you want to share. There you go. So I have playing cards. What I couldn't find, Lori, is a C that's in a not bolded font because we need a small curve and a big curve, right? So I went with the C's I could find. So this is just a set of playing cards. I made a red set and a green set. And I would put these in a sensory bin or something somebody had to dig out of, or put them at the beginning of the obstacle course that they have to get and bring back to the board. And then when we've got a couple, the question then becomes, what letters could we make, right? I'm not like, I have some target letters in my mind, but you know, if I only bury, you know, the horizontal and the vertical and maybe, you know, a short line, which I didn't make in these cards, right? Maybe I'm targeting the letter A. So to me, it's about how do I prep the activity in a way that still helps build. And we could use this as a traditional playing card game sitting at a table, but I know very few 3, 4, and 5-year-olds that want to sit and play cards at a table.
Right.
So if I'm going to use something like this, I'm gonna have them go find them, bring them back over, have it be a race, have them get them back over, and then talk about what could we make with what we have.
Right. So you'd have physical items that match these wherever you are, and you draw these from the game and make it a game out of it.
Absolutely.
Right.
By the way, I see what you mean by not having like the solid thin line that matches the solid dotted line. You know what I like
never
about
come away with
LessonPix?
one of these without making an ask.
I love feedback like that because it just makes LessonPix better. So
we need that, and we need the short line for like an E and an A.
All righty. To write my notes down.
That's why we're doing this, right? So you found did you find these I can't mark this on yours. The C's that you have there, the dotted C's. Mm-hmm. Those already existed in the writing.
The dotted C's are there. So I could come into, I don't know why I'm looking on that screen to do this. Okay. I could come, see, this is what happens if I wait too long. It's all good. But see, it doesn't take me that long. I can log right back in. So if I come in and I could either come down to letters or come into OT. That tends to be how I go find them. And then I could come to dot the letters here, but you also see there's your street letters. Right. So the dotted letters have the dotted letters for the actual formation. And then if you come down, you have writing strokes.
Yep.
And that's where I would petition for there to be the components to make a capital E or a capital A. But I come and get, depending on the student, you know, some of our students do well with the dotted line structure, and some of them I would come and get the straight line structure. I just pulled these real quick to give you an example. But you could do the same activity with students that aren't ready for letters and that are just working on pre-writing strokes, just working on horizontal, vertical, circle,
and
cross.
you can combine these in the symbol builder to make what you want as well, right? Like if you wanted to do the E's, you could piece them together in steps and things like that.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
Yep.
Cool.
So you actually use this for, I mean, writing is what people think about when they hear about OTs. It's not.
So
it's not
for
what I
young
think about when I think
students,
about you at all.
yeah, for young students, I will, look at, where are they? What do they need? And if they're ready for pre-writing strokes, they've got a good, functional grasp on a writing tool, and they're giving me maybe a vertical line, maybe they're ready for what's next.
Yeah.
And that could be a learner at any stage of emergent learning. I have some students who are older who, never really got exposed to handwriting, but could be handwriters or just want to draw, right? And I want to give them that exposure to what's important to you? Like, let's look at the letters of your name and those kinds of things.
Yeah. I was just going to add one thing too, like what you were saying before, Elisa, about finding what's motivating for that student. It's so easy to take what they're passionate about. If it's cars and trucks, if it's animals, if it's whatever it is, and then use those images in LessonPix in combination. Like I love the cutting lines and the cutting links templates for that reason, because I can put whatever is highly motivating, and then they can work on straight lines, curvy lines, wavy lines, whatever it is that it might be, but I can do it in the context of something that they're interested in, right? Because otherwise it can be really a dry task, right? It's and we need to find a way to, gain that interest.
Yeah.
And I think, again, we do a lot of work in the pre-writing space. But I think, for younger learners, for elementary learners, it's also about how do we help them be in their classroom and be active participants in that classroom. And so maybe for some learners, that is writing. That's the space that they really struggle. For a lot of our learners, especially our younger learners, it's self-regulation. They cannot get their body to organize enough to be able to do the thing that's being asked of them.
Right.
And that's making sure that they have sensory movement spaces prior to us going to sit down and do a thing. And so all of those things. And then as we get older, we're talking about more executive functioning outside of just organization for tasks. I think executive functioning is one of those pots that's so big that we as related service providers don't need to fight over who's gonna support it, right? There's plenty of work to be done. And I think that about many things, but I know sometimes there's is it a speech language thing? Is it a special educator thing? Is it an OT thing? The answer is yes. There's enough space for all of us to be supporting executive functioning where we don't need to fight about it. And we just take our little chunk, and then ultimately what you have is a learner that benefits by the knowledge of all of us combined.
So while we're on this, would you like us to, or would you like to kind of go over some of the executive functioning things that we offer? Or
if you want to dive in, and I'll definitely find one of my favorites. Go for it. Okay.
You want me to show anything here? You want me to bring up on the screen?
Well, you do know how to put me on the spot.
I do. It's not just
where I would send people is there is an article about it supporting executive functioning.
Yep. There's a very comprehensive article with a lot of different examples to get your brain around the idea of what executive functioning is and what we're talking about right there.
This one?
That's it.
6 activities to support executive functioning.
Just 6.
Mm-hmm. And then it's got.
We like to keep it simple.
Yeah.
So I think the important thing here is not everybody's going to need a visual about the library station, right? But they can go, oh, wow, okay, I see how they made a set for library station. What I really need is a visual for, something different.
And this is a template called picture schedule. We opened this up. There's dozens of different styles of picture schedule in there.
Including the dinosaur one she was talking about earlier.
Yeah, I mean, you could literally say if you have a kid who needs this thing but needs it laid out, something motivating for them. In the case of a dinosaur, something like that, you can clear your tray. You can go down. You can. If I get my mouse to work, you can load your tray up with these pictures. Go to the pictures schedule right here. Hit next. Let's pretend these words are right. And then all of these are in here. So whatever the kid needs to be motivated, bees or rainbows, dinosaurs right here,
Yep.
right? And I'm not sure which order they go. I go left to right. So if we'll choose a Century Gothic font and hit finish, and you can make your own list of this, right? So regardless of how you want to lay this out or what the kids are into, you can make that schedule in any format. You can make a checklist, right? You can hit back. I want to make a checklist and make a checklist, right? It's super simple to make any kind of visual schedule. And Lori has made so many schedules. There's flap schedules.
The flap one.
Yep.
The flap schedule is very popular with kids that need visual isolation and need to be able to just see the thing that's their task ahead of them, and they don't want to see what they've already done because it gets a little confusing.
Yeah, and there's even instructions here.
So they're just little flaps that close down over the symbols.
And it says, fold here, cut here, and they'll fold down on top of the things as you get done with each one.
You can say all done.
All done. The other big hit at AOTA was really the frames, right? We had the make and take on the frames. Do we have those?
We do. We have those as well. So
let's do
you asked
this.
We got a lot. These were a big hit, actually.
These were a big hit. So here you go. So these were at the
best of everything OTs love. It's like dollar store find plus visual schedule all in one.
Right. So this has got this was these are what feelings and emotions like.
These are just emojis. Can be used with any age student because we talk in emojis. But everybody loved doing these.
So you simply cut holes in whatever it is. Like you've got your dollar store picture card frame here.
Frames,
do 2 slices and pull this through, and they can choose where they are. Right. You have another one for the steps. Right. You've got I don't know if you printed any, but we had these that had the visual schedule as you went across on these. Right.
Yeah.
So so these are the frames. These actually were Allie's idea long before she was ever a therapist. Our daughter Allie was like, we could make frames, and I'm like, okay. Now she's a speech path in Bradenton and probably making frames.
Well, we're on executive functioning before we get too far. Also, you had talked about the writing pages, and this is sort of a transition. This is actually under visual schedules, and it's called the writing sheet. And what I like about it is, like, if you're asked to write about your day, like if you asked me what I did today, I really would have no clue, right? And I don't know why we'd expect our kids to kind of put it all together and then focus on a point and write about it. But the fact that you can add visuals in there to help you organize the information within your brain, so when you write about your day, you have some cues there on the side, or whatever the topic is of what you're writing about.
And one of the things that I really like about, and that's made with one of the templates within the picture schedule template, right,
yes.
Lori?
Yes.
One of the things that I love
all the time when I go to tell them where to find it, I'm like, no, I know you want to do a writing page, but don't go down to the time of writing.
You want to know why? Because I wanted it to hold 10 symbols.
I hear you. It's a very valid reason. I just have to always kind of preface my statement. But I think it's good because I think sometimes we get in the habit of thinking this template is this way. And it's a great example of, like, yes, this is a visual schedule, but it's a visual schedule with the purpose of writing, not like, let's talk about how I did a certain thing or what I'm going to do.
Right.
One of the things I was just going to mention really quickly within the whole picture schedule set of templates, like when you were on that template before and showing when you were making something, you might have noticed that it said like how many pictures, right? There's going to be 5. If you had 5 pictures in your tray, it was going to be 5 pictures on the page. But one of the things that a lot of people don't realize, let's say you do have 10 pictures in your tray, like for that one, but maybe 10 pictures on a single page is too overwhelming when we're talking about that executive function and all of that. Maybe that's too visually overwhelming. One of the really cool things that I like to do with a couple of the different picture schedule templates, so that writing one, it works really nicely with the checklist schedule, is you can like the checklist schedule. Like if I only wanted 2 pictures on a page,
or 3,
3 pictures on a page, I can change it and it's going to give me 2 pages of a checklist schedule, right? But the pictures are going to be bigger and it's going to let me break down, like, so it's not, there's sometimes kids are like, it's too much, right? For them to see everything all at once. And so I think that's like a little hidden trick that a lot of people don't think about with the schedule. You don't have to have every picture that you're putting in that schedule doesn't have to be on a single page.
On a single page. Yep. It'll definitely spread them across. Yep. I agree.
Good point.
All right. So so visual schedules are obviously one of the big things that we can show here. Coming back for a second to the article.
We're gonna
just for a second.
Okay.
Just for a second. There you go. So there are just a bunch of other things we do, right? We do checklists. There actually is a separate thing called menus and lists, which is a great way to make lists of things you need to do.
I do have one that I can just hold up, but like what good writers do. So you can see.
Yep.
Just
so that's one of the
a
templates
cute
in
way.
there as well.
Yep. Happen to have that one.
So other things on here, practice the situation, set goals and reinforcement. So then you've got your first then, your first then last, or first then next. And you can change this text to anything you want, right? And then I'm working for like a longer term, what are your goals, things and things like that. So this is a great place to start if you're looking for executive functioning. Literally, if you want to find this, it's super easy. When you get to LessonPix, this will say all. And as long as it says all, if you type in executive function and hit go, you'll get pictures up here. But then right here where it says articles, it's going to be the first one right here.
And it does carry over into that occupational therapy article too. It does kind of talk about some of the spaces we support in with some other examples. So I know some of those things kind of link out to other places as well.
Yep.
And
it
is a good cross section of kind of where OT how OT could utilize LessonPix. See the bracelet that was also very popular at AOPA.
This one right here. This was a huge hit. Yeah, sensory choices. Actually, the feelings and emotions, like how am I feeling, right? Or was it how to chill out? I forget what
it was. How to calm.
It was calming options, because sometimes you don't have your communication device right there and then. Like if you're on a field trip and it's not right where you are, you're on the playground, right? That you need something right then and there, and you need to tell somebody right now. Instead of it not being, I don't have the words for it, I can't express, I'm going to have maybe an escalation in being upset. You could absolutely utilize that in a quick way. And I know we're talking about OTs, but probably one of the other spaces I send OTs in the very beginning, especially if they're working in like pre-K to second grade, is in a story. And that might seem a little weird because you think, well, they're OTs. Why are you sending them to in a story? Because I think it helps them conceptualize where and how they could support in this basket of literacy. So these are all popular storybooks that most of our kids are getting exposed to across their day. And, there's nothing better than going to a teacher and saying, hey, I want to do this activity. Oh, and by the way, I can help support all the other centers that are going to happen with this activity. And it just so happens when they come to my center, they're going to do something that's fine motor based. That I can help support. So it's an easy way for them to kind of see the connection between what component of this could be a literacy-based activity, a writing, or a fine motor-based activity for those learners.
We're going to spend more time on literacy, but just for people who don't know what she's talking about, if you look in LessonPix, right underneath the word custom, it says in a story. And that actually is where Lori has gone through an absolute ton of early childhood stories, and even some that aren't so early childhood. We have like
Romeo Riley,
Castle.
Well, so what I say on this, we do have one chapter book in here.
Romeo Riley. Yep.
Yeah.
Romeo Riley,
and that's really adorable. The author contacted me, and it was a really good match for what we do. But as Beth will probably point out as well, a lot of the stories, such as Say Something or there's a ton of them that Martha speaks.
They're beautiful for older kids. There's a lot of books in there that I would use, and I am a huge advocate of using age appropriate literature with kids, but there are some beautiful picture books that you can use across age groups. Martha Speaks is a great one. say something is a wonderful one.
If
Another
you
one
look
is
just at the vocabulary there,
yeah,
the words that are being presented in that book, they are not pre-K kindergarten words.
Right.
And that you can provide some visual support so that kids understand what is the brain, what are we talking about when you're talking about the brain. And maybe the moment for pre-K is different than a fifth grader, but you could absolutely be presenting that material to a fifth grader, and they're not going to be like, this is babyish, why are you reading this book to me?
Right.
Yeah, there's some higher level concepts, like some like that are boiled down to be in a picture book, but like things about friendship or communication. There's a new one. Right. There's a lot of that.
The new one that just went up last week is The Good Egg.
Yeah, that's another one that's perfect to read with older kids. And when I say older kids, I mean, you can read some of these with high schoolers in the context of, we're going to look at this picture book. What themes do you see in this picture book? How does that relate to other literature that we're reading, et cetera?
Right.
And it's also an opportunity, if you are working with older learners, to pair it with something that, maybe they become confident about that book, and then their job is to go read it to a pre-K class, or their job is to help make an activity that the students could do in a different grade level. So I think there's lots of ways. And again, all these topics that are showing up there under this mindfulness, being able to work through self-regulation, to not have your brain explode like the little
everything on here is what we did at AOTA. This entire category.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, there are definitely, I saw writing components to it, right? There are definitely spaces where literacy and OT can kind of be friends.
Yeah. So the in a story section is actually one of these hidden gems that, like Kelly Fonner said, I didn't know there was a category. Like, yes, go to the in a story. There is an unbelievable wealth of information and things that get you started. And even if they just show you how you might use these different templates, it's just a great collection of them.
Yeah, it's a great way to kind of conceptualize, okay, I know I've got this target skill, right? Maybe I didn't have a ton of time to prep materials, but I can go and look and say, oh, yep, this is thematic based on what's happening in the classroom or the setting or the time of year. And this can be a quick way to prep materials, whether you're in your first year of practice or you're in your 20th and you're like, oh, I have kids tomorrow I didn't really prep for. I can always go grab a literacy set of resources and have something that, again, we're wanting to address that component skill, but it can't be a dry, boring worksheet.
Absolutely.
I've actually, to just add on to exactly what you said there, it's not even if you're not prepped, things happen all the time. Like an assembly comes in the morning and it's really hard because you have your lesson planned for X, but they're all revved up about the firemen that came that day.
Right.
Well, I've got something far more engaging and motivating. In fact, one time I had this cool fly come in the room and the lesson was like gone. But we were able to look up about this fly and turn the lesson around. So I love the fact that I could get visuals at my fingertips to use with an impromptu lesson like that.
So before we go much further down this rabbit hole, I'd really like to talk to Elisa about literacy. Because I was always surprised that it was an OT who is running the book study for comprehensive literacy for all.
Elisa is sometimes surprised it's her that's running the book study. To be fair.
So for those of you who don't know, this is the book, the Bible. We all have copies of this book around, especially for kids with complex communication needs and complex bodies. And you are running the book study for Karen Erickson's Comprehensive Literacy for All.
And David Copenhaver.
And David Copenhaver.
Co-author now, come on.
All right, but I haven't met him. Karen, on the other hand, is delightful. And brilliant. Absolutely brilliant.
Absolutely brilliant. So yes, they wrote this book 2020-ish. Came out right about the time that we entered the pandemic, and just started as a very small group of folks who wanted to talk through, what does this look like? What does this look like for implementation? And you see the number up there, which
7,000 members. 7,000 members now, right?
7,000 people internationally who are engaged in the work of what does comprehensive literacy mean for all learners, from a learner who maybe doesn't have mouth words to communicate to somebody who has a very complex body and has very little movement of their body. and what does that mean for them. I think of that work and that group, I'm most excited when there is kind of a lone ranger. It could be a parent, it could be a teacher, it could be a therapist that says, I'm really excited about this comprehensive literacy, and maybe I am surrounded by people who know nothing about it, or I'm surrounded by people who think it's not appropriate for my learner. Where do we go from here? And that group has become an excellent community of people who have very clear examples, some of which are LessonPix, very clear, showing people what it could be like for kids who have very complex needs, who, this is one of those pendulum swings that not very long ago, they were not participating in literacy in any regard. They were taught, I'm going to use air quotes, functional literacy, read a stop sign, read a bathroom sign. And we know that our kids are capable of so much more. They're capable of learning.
The reality is we have no idea what they're capable of, right? We have no idea because their expectations have been set so, many of them, their expectations have been set so low that we've never given them a chance to show us what they can do.
Absolutely. There are learners in that space. And, some of it is the pre-service education that teachers got to how they became a teacher.
Right.
And some of it is that we now finally have a very nice body of research to support that, this is not single case study, isolated things that are happening, that we have one kid who, their intelligence became unlocked. It's no, our learners need to be exposed to systematic phonics work. They need to be exposed to what it is to grow their vocabulary and to learn to write. And when I say write, this is that OT piece of me. This does not mean pick up a pencil, a number 2 pencil, and put it to paper. There are so many ways that you can perform a written expression activity. And when we think about writing, that could be typing a letter, that could be using letter stamps. Probably some of my kids' favorites is to use a labeler, right? You got a keyboard, QWERTY keyboard right there. Yeah. You can print it out, you can tape it, or if you can get the paper off the back of it, you can stick it on your worksheet, right? It's very quick ways to give them access to those 26 letters. I think sometimes well-meaning, we assume a learner only really might need to say what we program in their communication device.
Right.
And I say lots of things across my day that are not in any communication system anywhere. And so to give our learners the best shot to be able to show us everything they know and have active, full participation in their lives, they need access. And so I wish more OTs would claim that space of helping to identify an alternate pencil if a number 2 pencil is not going to be the way. Because we do have specific motor training to look at what part of their body can access. We do have the visual perceptual ability to kind of see what they're seeing, see how we can adjust their positioning. All those things are skills that are really we walk out of school knowing how to do that task analysis. And so when I think about OTs, and maybe they're not going to deep dive in literacy as much as I have over the last couple of years, but I do think that identifying an alternate pencil is a key place for our OTs to be supporting. And then we have some fantastic OT professionals, both occupational therapists and certified occupational therapy assistants that do this work to find how can we provide them access to write and get rid of the misnomer of it has to be a paper and a pencil to do that action.
Yeah, we have, so I was going to bring this up and show something. So just for those of you who heard alternative pencil once in there and thought, what the hell? So one of the places to go for this would be Karen's group at UNC, right? So if I can see this a little bit bigger, this is UNC School of Medicine, alternative pencils. Yeah. Right. Can you see this? Okay.
I can, but
and basically the goal is that, maybe I have learners that use all kinds of pencils. These are some low tech ways for them to be participating. Right. And it might be that another adult is helping them. We would call the fancy word would be partner assisted. Right. And it might be that this is a precursor. So you see the alphabet eye gaze frame over there on the right.
Right.
That's something we have learners that will use, but sometimes they're on their dedicated device and sometimes their dedicated device isn't working. It's
Or
broken.
We're just thrown across the room, right?
Right. Something happened to it.
Right.
And we need to make sure that they still have access to tell us what they need, what they want, what's important to them.
Right. And we have so LessonPix has built in, we have eye gaze frames. You can put letters in them. That works just fine. We have some in the sharing center that have that. So we're and this isn't all about what to use this particular tool for, right? When we talk to Karen, when you talk to Karen, we know the differences when we should be looking at symbols and when we should be looking at text. And I've had it kind of hammered home on me repeatedly. They asked me to add the ability to add text easily into the games and make a bingo game that has the words. It doesn't have the pictures. We do that now.
The first thing that came to mind was a discussion as we're talking about the pencils and not limiting them to a simple symbol set.
Right.
Here's your board with 12 symbols.
Right.
To
we
tell about your feelings of the story. I think that's very limiting.
Well, and I've had conversations on the AT Maker side with some of the folks that we're helping support about, and it came straight from Karen. It's a quote. I'm almost going to get on her soapbox. Like, the number one most important thing you can do for somebody who's a complex communicator is to teach them to read. And just this, for those of you who aren't educators, I'm an engineer, right? So today, when I look at the technology that's out there, if you can read and you can read each letter, then you can write. Right? Because you're going to get autocomplete and you're going to get a keyboard next to you have a keyboard with you all the time, right? And if you're using switch control, you can access it without being able to physically get it. But if you can't read, all that stuff is useless, right? All that stuff, you're never going to get beyond the grid of however many symbols it is. And I know
it's the grid that somebody else has maybe chosen for you.
Right. And there are
the words that you can go into that keyboard and tell them add this here, but sometimes you're dependent on somebody else to do that, and it doesn't always happen.
Right.
And so I think, again, those 26 letters are in English. If you're in a different language, of course, there are more letters and symbols. But
Sure.
I think it's so important that we're exposing learners early and often to those 26 letters. And again, OT spaces, we're not teaching letter sounds, right? That's not our scope. I think I have all 44 phonemes down and I could produce them, but that's not my scope, right?
Right.
So, but I do think OTs can work really diligently alongside that speech language pathologist and alongside that classroom teacher to figure out and problem solve, and the parent and the family,
Right.
How do we make sure that they have access and that we're exposing them over and over and over again? We know, it may take them longer to learn what are these letters and what are these sounds and how do they go together. That's okay. I have some learners for which some of their long-term goals are to get to the space where they can type using whatever method is working for them, eye gaze,
Right.
switches, whatever, and know what word prediction is and how to access it. And if we can get those learners to that space, we're unlocking the world for them. We're making it such that they can Google image search. They can, that they can communicate when something's going well, and they can communicate if, unfortunately, they're in the situation where somebody is not caring for them well.
Right. And
I had a principal once who said, reading, and I know literacy, reading and writing are intertwined, but this always stuck with me. And she said, reading is the way in, writing is the way out. And that idea of the information in and being able to have that information out. And that phrase always stuck with me.
I know there are going to be people who think there are going to be people, specifically SLPs, that are like, oh, it's our turf. It's our turf. It's our turf. If you think for a minute so there are going to be obstacles in kids' way to being able to express themselves. And if you don't think an OT can help, you haven't worked with enough good OTs, right? The number of times they're the ones who found the access point, or they're the ones who said, hey, if you just moved your hand, I can just picture Judy saying, do you have an old mouse? Here, cut the cord off of the end of that old mouse that's broken. And now her hand will drape over this. And look, now she can access that switch.
Yeah.
Right. Okay.
I really wish when we were talking about kids who have complex access needs, I really wish funders and those making decisions about devices required someone who had access knowledge as an OT. Because I don't expect an SLP to be the master of language and the master of device systems and the master of access.
Right.
We really want to work on how do we help support them in a way that that we're a good collaborative team member, right? I'm not going to come in and say, you SLP, this is the system you have to choose. I'm going to come and say, hey, based on their profile and what they have access needs wise, can we talk about these features? Right. Because I think it's important. Again, there are some kids that as a learner, as a communicator, they are direct select. They are pretty straightforward. You probably don't need me. Maybe you need me to remind you about how the device is positioned so the glare doesn't attack their eyes. But you don't need me in the day-to-day of how do you get that device up and running.
Right.
From an access perspective, again, I think there's a very strong, I don't know, a strong component of OT that can overlap well. And I am continually reminding people that it's not very often that AOTA, APTA, which is the Physical Therapy Association, and ASHA write a collaborative document about anything.
Right.
Right. So when they do, you pay attention, and they produced a document about collaborative goal writing. And I think it just speaks to the fact that we need to be more collaborative, right? There are students to which I don't have all the answers to, and that my teacher doesn't, and that the SLP we need to be collaborative to be able to problem solve kids whose situations are unique and different. And to do that, we need to be working together and not have it be a territorial fight.
Right. Okay, so we can get off our soapboxes, our respective soapboxes. So, all right. So,
Alyssa, did you have anything
what do you
as
want
we
to show?
come to the end of the hour? Is there anything
else
that you
been an
really
hour?
want to focus on?
Okay, we're awful. We're the worst.
I agree about OT's creativity. I think, I was trying to find the best example of what we do. And I think the fun thing is I could come in the sharing center and look across all of these little areas, which right now I'm filtered down to other things. And I could find spaces where even if I'm not in the curriculum and instruction area and going into writing, I could find things that that absolutely OTs could be supporting. So here's a great example. Here's digraph and trigraph cards. I had to make high contrast ones, right? Because I had a student that was having trouble accessing them, right? So I think for a lot of these activities that are happening, it's let's start with the activity that's in place. And sometimes it's just a very small tweak or a modification, and they're using the same kind of materials. And sometimes we have to kind of start from scratch and think, how do we really dig deep to find a way and the best way for that learner to participate? But all of these spaces of curriculum instruction and then beyond, I know some other folks across the month are going to talk about other places other than school age. But I do think that, when we talk about OT space and what could be supportive, I hesitate to just show one example because I'm I don't want to pigeonhole us into writing again.
No, you're good. So I think we saw at the conference the number of things that people walked into. I mean, a lot of them went straight for behavior management, executive functioning, visual schedules. A lot of them went for fine motor, handwriting, cutting, right? Obviously, we have direct things to support that. But then there were so many things that were like these, right? That we made these in the make. Do you have a talk about
parallel ways for someone to participate that. And again, it's not like a story puppet is a revolutionary idea, right? We've been using story puppets in educational setting for years, but I think the ability to customize it to be something either that's super cool, like it's an emoji and people want to communicate with emojis, or to be super relevant to the material or to that learner. I think that's the space where absolutely being able to quickly do things. And a lot of the OTs that I talked with at at AOTA, it was some of the other stuff. It was the example we showed of grid books of like words that you could use to participate in songs during circle time. It's a time when a lot of therapists push in to help support self-regulation or other things and making sure they have access to the words. So I don't know that it's any one like specific thing. I think, you know, a lot of times it's just nice to have a little bit of extra inspiration about like, hey, I hadn't thought about using it in that way or using this thing in that way.
Very cool. All right. So Lori,
Right.
You have a bunch of other crap over there. I mean, stuff over there.
I have all month.
That's true. You do have all.
And I could probably talk for several months. So.
Gotcha. Is there anything we need to show tonight?
Well, I do have one idea. Well, since you asked.
Since I asked.
This actually isn't mine. It's actually Beth's idea. So Beth might be happy to see it. But we do talk about using like random generators in order to help engage with learning. So using a spinner with body positions in order to practice moving. It just makes it fun if it's something random. And Beth actually made this on the Sharing Center, which maybe the class has just finished a story. If you want to work, you know, just engage with
surprising. What do you want? Yeah.
Questioning about the story you read, and more specifically, how you feel about the story.
Well, and it's
not
a static checklist. It's not a list of things on a piece of paper, right? It's something. I got my hands on something.
Yeah, and it's just paper, so you can.
Right. Well, you stuffed it with something, right?
I put cotton in that.
Cotton balls in there, yeah. So, because you know,
yeah, I use that same template for pre-writing things, for words that they need to use in a sentence if they're writing. You know, there is research that connects like a movement activity to, you know, activity within the brain to be able to better be ready to participate as a learner. And I think those things are quick ways to be able to we're not like changing the entire flow of the classroom. We're just giving them a slightly more interactive way of doing it.
Right. Exactly.
You know? And I like those open-ended questions because you don't have to have a right answer. You just have whatever answer you give is right. Right. When it's open-ended, if it's your opinion. And
right.
Mm-hmm.
And those open-ended questions are really great if you're working with complex learners and you're working in shared reading. Like we don't want to make a reading experience a comprehension drill and quick kill. You know, we don't want to make it so like, oh my gosh, I have to listen to the story and I know somebody's going to ask me a question about it after. You know, I just want to have a general response to a book. You know, I want to like something about it. I want to not like something about it. Be able to share that in kind of it's a less scary way to give your input into something.
Yep.
So Bill's holding bookmarks, which we also made at AOTA, and there are several ideas that I've heard across, you know, going to these conferences and talking to people. What I love about a simple bookmark, just the simple bookmark, is the number of ways people use it. The first one there, you show I have a question, and that can just kind of be tucked in the book anywhere if the student wants to jot notes down or kind of organize their thoughts along the way. But the other one might have a sensory strategy, and I like to put these in a cup or something where the students can pick it out, and maybe they can choose where they want to stop reading. And when they get to that point, you know, do that activity that they chose on the bookmark, just to help break it up and give them a little control, that it's not too overwhelming, you know, to do.
And again, when it comes to self-regulation and sensory choices, our long-term goal is to do what we all do as adults, right? Find ways to get those sensory needs met in a way that is not obtrusive to the schedule of your day. So that's a skill, again, we have to explicitly teach. It just doesn't happen for a lot of our learners. And I think, you know, then we have the ability for us to error correct, getting up in the middle of the class is not the time to do that. Like, let's talk about how to do that. And the more we can slowly build their independence in that skill, the more they're going to have more self-confidence about utilizing that skill. So that when they are sitting in their middle school, high school classroom and they know what they need, they're able to advocate for it and to utilize it and then get back to doing the job of being a student.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yep. All right. Well, I think we're doing awesome. Alyssa, is there anything we haven't touched on that you really think, oh my God, if I don't cover that, somebody's going to kill me?
I don't. I'm hoping it's not, a life or death proposition. I would just say, please ask your OTs for that help. Sometimes OTs are a little bit hesitant to push in and offer a support, but they have lots of really good ideas or things that they maybe have tried in a session if they do pull your students out that you may not know are working well for them. So setting up that time to have a conversation with them. OTs may be weird birds and use OT colored glasses, but really we just want to bring skills to the table to help benefit those learners.
Yeah, absolutely. And you do great. And you're all over the place. You're an AT OT, you're a literacy OT.
It was hard to narrow in for a conversation for just an hour.
Yep, exactly right. And we're only 2 minutes over. You're going to be fine. We started 2 minutes late. You're good. I said it was going to be a half an hour.
It's supposed to be 30 minutes.
When has it ever been a half an hour?
It hasn't ever been a half an hour. So on the bright side, we have a lot of great conversation going on the side. I've popped some of them up. If any of you are on Facebook or YouTube and you have comments or questions, Alyssa will get access to both. I did post a link. Thank you, Beth, for pulling it up to get the link to the interprofessional collaborative goals and school-based practice kind of thing. And so I posted that to both as well. But if you have any questions, let us know. We will be doing this again.
So who's coming next Wednesday?
Who do you think? No, it's not Judy.
It's not Judy.
Julie Marzano from Fine Motor Boot Camp will be here next Wednesday night. And then the following Wednesday night will be Judy Schoonover. Okay. And then we'll have Debbie Schwinn from Loudoun County. And she did the fabulous art kit, but I don't think that's what she's going to talk about.
No.
We've already talked to her about the art kit. So we're going to
talk about
something different.
We're going to talk about a little bit older kids.
Yep.
Transition in community-based instruction.
Yep. And we might have a bonus OT. We might have somebody come in and talk about how to introduce LessonPix to your OT students at the university level. But I haven't gotten a yes yet, so I'm not going to give out her name.
You just tossing it out there.
Throwing it out there, somebody else could bump her if there's some other professor who wants to come on and talk about how she uses LessonPix, because it's free. It's free for the university kids, right? So absolutely they should be doing this. That doesn't mean we shouldn't show them how to bring it in and make it work well.
Absolutely.
And any SLPs that are paying attention, next month is Better Hearing and Speech
Month. Might be
Month.
Better Hearing and Speech Month. So if you've got an SLP who has an interesting, take on how they use LessonPix, not that could happen, you might reach out and let us know who they are. If it's you, let us know if you're available. It probably won't be Wednesday. It's probably shifted.
The conversations like these help make LessonPix
absolutely
better. It helps make us better as professionals. So it's all good. Win-win.
Yep. Absolutely. All right. So I am going to, I'm going to pack this up and let everybody say, so Helen says, thank you. Great show. Yeah.
We love it. We walk away with an idea.
Hopefully you walk away with an idea. And if you have some that we didn't touch on, the ways that you're using it in OT or any other practice, let us know. We'll be happy to get it on in the next. In fact, we will recap any comments we get at the beginning of the next show. And that'll be next Wednesday at 6:00. All right. Well, Alyssa, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you for going first. It's really hard to go first. I know it's really hard to go first. Julie's like, oh my God, they're going to throw me right under the bus.
It's all good. I knew what I was walking into.
Yeah. So most of the folks coming on here have been on at least once. They know what they're getting into at some level. But you're an old pro. You're with us all the time. So thank you again. And everybody, thank you for joining us today. And as always, good luck and have fun. And we'll see you next week. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Thank you.